This is our claim to fame with Harrington so far. It's our K4 SwingCheck Valve. This is a very innovative and technically superior check valve to all other S4 check valves, including our own.
So the S4 is that the older style, this one here?
Yes, that's the S4, Vince.
And this is polypropylene, of course.
Yeah, this one here is polypropylene, and this one is PVC. For comparison, this is a 6-inch and this is a 4-inch.
Right.
Just happen to have this one available.
Now, many of the branches have run into this particular check valve through Hayward, because you guys provide Hayward this valve, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And then I think we see this from George Fisher and from CPEX and several other companies around the world.
Excellent point. That was one of our reasons to bring out a new valve is, yes, CPEX has a valve that's similar, doesn't have the spring though. Mm-hmm. We had the spring, but there was an opportunity to make something better where we removed the spring from the process in this new valve, which we'll get into.
Right.
We improved the flapper design, which we're going to get into. We made the valve more robust and technically superior. So we can get right into the valve itself in terms of the materials.
So this style of valve always requires a spacer?
Yes, Vince, that's correct. When you buy the wafer check, you will always need a spacer if the pipe is IPS. On metric piping systems, spacers aren't required because it was designed in Europe almost 20 years ago.
Specifically designed for metric piping systems then?
Exactly.
Okay. So if we want to use that in Asahi's Agru piping or George Fisher's metric piping?
Yes, I'm quite confident that should work.
Okay, great. All right.
But most of the applications require the spacer.
Right.
So
and that's to allow enough clearance so that the
yeah, exactly. So the disc can open fully, so you don't reduce the pressure drop through the valve.
Okay.
Or so you don't reduce the flow through the valve. So, yeah, when we looked at this valve, we had to find out what other things we can improve on it. Well, when you buy the valve, spacers are always, some people forget to order the spacers. When they get the spacer, they forget that it needs another flange gasket. You've got a ring on one side, you got a ring on this, but now you need a flange gasket here. Mm-hmm. So things can happen in the field that make for this valve to be much more attractive.
Right.
Yes, our K4 SwingCheck is available in PVC, polypro, and glass-filled or reinforced polypropylene, as well as PVDF. Back to the glass-filled polypro, it gives you a higher pressure and temperature capability. Mainly the temperature brings polypro from 195 F to 250 F. The size...
And this is the valve that really spurred my interest for Harrington, is the fact that this is a unique product, obvious industrial quality, and virtually perfect for all of our branch salespeople to be out selling in many, many applications.
And that was absolutely, because we had something that was somewhat unique to the market, and we've developed it over a large size range that is going to be released slowly.
Are you also going to have this in CPVC?
That'll probably be the next step after we complete our ball valves.
All right.
But right now, currently, it's designed from 2.5 inch to 12 inch, but currently manufactured from 3 to 8 inch in sizes. Now the 10-inch valve, I just found out recently, is in the testing stage in Europe. So it should be released in the next few months. Another great opportunity for us in the United States.
Yeah.
Pressure rating on these valves, 150 psi. It's compatible with your ANSI, DIN, so it'll take the metric and IPS piping systems. There's a slotted bolt hole here, which is important. We'll show you that later. Okay, now we're looking at the other features of this valve. The installation mounting holes I just mentioned were elongated to account for metric or IPS piping and flange systems. We have a unique position indicator with this valve. There's a yellow pin that comes up. Very unique in a check valve just to have an indication point. And it's transparent housing or cover so you can see the pin come up. There is potential to put a limit switch device on this, but that would be down the road. As a, we're not going to put that in our current marketing budgets. Excellent flow rates with this design when it's wide open. One of the keys with the whole design, as we mentioned earlier, was the design of the disc and the pins and the hinge mechanism. And it's got an integrated spacer. It's all one piece. There's no extra spacer to build up. So when the valve disc opens, the space here accommodates for that. Now we've come up with something very unique to the market, an integrated flange O-ring that's built into the face of the body. But this new design was developed in cooperation with the Cincinnati branch. Yes, when we were at the Cincinnati branch, we discovered that our traditional round O-ring didn't line up with one particular raised face flange. And that brand was actually an IPEX. The spacing on the ribs were wider on that actual face, and it basically got caught up. It didn't squeeze the whole face of a round traditional O-ring here. So we developed this quad O-ring, which basically is it's a double O-ring face. So there's 2 points of contact. It allowed for continuous contact with the flange itself. In Europe, they didn't have this problem because they saw a lot of George Fisher very tight spaces on their faces of their flanges. But now we've addressed something, and we've got a double O-ring sealing mechanism, which is another plus to the marketplace. And one thing I want to mention, they did a great job with Cincinnati bringing this to our attention and working with our development person, John Derniator. And we turned this thing around from a concern to having brand new gaskets made on all the sizes in 5 months' time, which was very impressive that we can go back to the market with a solution that quickly.
So now with the quad ring seal, there's no issues as far as sealing with any kind of a flange.
We've tested it on all the flanges we've seen here in this marketplace.
Very interesting.
So that was a good teamwork between Harrington and ourselves. It was a good accomplishment because we didn't want a brand new product to go out with why was it leaking on one particular flange only.
Right.
We solved that problem. Another feature with this valve is that you don't see a spring back here. It's a non-wetted spring design. The actual springs are set in this chamber here. So what happens is when you take this cover off, you're going to see spring sets right in here. And they're isolated from the process. There's a piston here that's made from PVDF, standard on all materials, with a unique double O-ring seal. So there's no process that's in touch with any of the metal.
So these are all non-wetted parts.
All non-wetted, great advantage over the other one.
But when the conventional valve has a spring, you've got some kind of metal that you have to deal with.
Exactly.
Okay.
And when you have a stainless spring on this one, sure, that's fine for some services. But when you introduce it to sodium hypochlorite bleach, you go to Hastelloy C, you triple the cost of this than a standard PVC one, which is a much more robust one.
Right.
So tremendous advantage. Now the spring sets themselves, when you get the valve, they're called nested springs. There's 2 springs, one within the other. When you get 2 of them in the valve like this, the valve is rated for 150 psi service. Now if you want the valve for 90 psi service, all we do is put the 1 spring in. So these are important questions you need to ask your customer. What is the service pressure? You get the valve with the spring set, so now you have to choose which spring combination to use. And the last one for 45 psi is just the inner spring. So all you do is use the inner spring, tighten this back up, and the installation of this is included with the valve in the box.
Installation instructions are in the box.
So now at 45 psi, you don't have as much to overcome when it opens. And also when it slams shut, you don't have this force acting on the disc itself, as you would on a 150 psi service where you need 2 springs. Okay, now here's some key technical advantages. During our meeting in Austria last February, we found some great test results to compare this valve with a previous generation valve. Well, what they did was they compared an 8-inch valve of the K4 style PVC material with an 8-inch of our S4 style. Okay, and what happened was they looked at the valves and they tested the valves with water pressure at 180 psi. But what happened is this valve wouldn't even take the heavy cycling at 180 psi, so we minimized the pressure on this one to 90 psi. So we're testing 180 psi versus 90 psi. And it's a cycling test, so we're going 0 to 100 psi, water for 6 seconds and stop. 0 to 180 psi, 6 seconds, stop. And what we found, and we did the same with this one, 0 to 90 psi, 6 seconds and stop. And what we found was amazing, that after thousands of cycles with both valves, the test revealed that the big difference between the S4 and the K4 is this one withstood 4 to 5 times more cycles at double the pressure to the previous design. So that was very significant for us and something that we can talk to the market about.
Which makes it a great choice for industrial applications, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the things that we've also noted. Again, it's designed to 12-inch, 10 inches coming soon. This is still our product, and we use it on the large diameters up to 20-inch. We don't want to, you can't make it all up to, can't make all the sizes up right away. But what was quite unique with all this testing, and we've had this for 20 years, so we used the data from this information to build this one. Well, one of our key competitors, George Fisher, I thought was quite interesting to see that they just launched an S4, a 20-year-old design check valve. They put a few ribs on it, improved the design a little bit, but it was amazing to see that they came up with a Me Too product that's 20-year-old technology. So we thought we had a real good selling advantage over their products. While where most of their products, the butterflies and balls, are very heavily engineered, and
right.
You know, so that's a little selling advantage for us against any of their products. Another competitive advantage over someone like an Asahi SwingCheck, a great robust flange SwingCheck. And if there's some particulate in the media and you have to use their access cover to get to it, a very good choice for a valve Asahi. But if you're looking at liquid service up to 150 psi, this is going to be priced at less than half of that price point of the Asahi product. Again, for the right application, this valve will meet those conditions. Yeah, and one of our first references with this product was actually at a biotech company in California. And they actually replaced a chattering ball check. It was actually an FRP composite body with a PTFE ball in it, 4-inch. And they were replaced with a solid PVDF K4 check at a substantial price reduction, and it solved their chattering purpose. So another application for this is where you see a ball check in the line, 3-4-inch, where it's chattering, put a spring-loaded K4 in place on those 3 and 4-inch lines.